Let's roll.
All right, let's get this thing kicked off. Jamie and Nicole, if you'll keep monitoring that chat there for us, or the room. I think I've got a few folks on here that's going to help us, and we're going to kind of tag team this. If you're on social media, feel free to tweet, share on Facebook or Instagram, First Friday Forum, use that hashtag or Educator First. We want to thank our speakers today, Matt and Matia, for sharing with us. You're in for a real treat today, guys, for what you're going to hear today. So I'm super excited about that. But really, let me talk to you a little bit about our agenda, what we're going to do today. Really, our purpose is really just to highlight and showcase two different models that address unfinished learning and focus really on growth and through an MTSS model. I've got Jamie Quinn on the call. Jamie is my counterpart there in North Carolina, as you know. I've got Nicole White, his other counterpart there in North Carolina. I believe I've got Eddie Crosby. Is Eddie on the call as well?
Yeah, man. Hey,
there
welcome everybody.
Hello.
Hey, Matia. Good to see you. Thanks for helping us out. This is awesome.
Hey, Eddie.
Very good. And I'm not sure if our boys from Virginia or West Virginia, Franklin or David, if they're on the call or not, but you guys say hello if you're there. But we're your Mid-Atlantic team for Edmentum, and we're really partnering up to showcase what's going on in our region in education, because we're hearing a lot of the same things as we talk with one another. And so we just really want to take an opportunity to share. So once Matia shares her time with us and some of the great things going on there at Camden Middle, turn it over to Matt and share what's going on over there in Rowan Salisbury through his MTSS model, and then throw it to Jamie to close us out for some closing remarks. So that's going to be our time together. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet, get you out of here in under 45 minutes is our goal. We value your time. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Miss Matia Goodwin. She is the principal at Camden Elementary School. And I had the distinct pleasure of talking with Matia a week or so ago, and through a meeting with some of her leadership team, they shared with us some of the great things that was going on at her school. And she just really, it really struck a nerve with me, some of the great things happening there. So I asked Matia to join us today to share some of the great things that she's doing. So Matia, without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to do this. I do have Valerie West. She's our data coach. She's in here. She's like, she doesn't want to be on camera, but she's in the room. So if we have any questions, she'll be here to help us kind of answer them. So as John Robert said earlier, I am the principal at Camden Elementary School. We're located here in Kershaw County School District. Our school, we have about 550 students in a diverse population. We've got about 35% African-American students, 55% Caucasian, and about 10% Hispanic. Approximately 55% of our students receive free or reduced lunch. As I'm sure all of you know, when we returned to school, we returned back in the pandemic. We left out, last year in March. So, and I have a very strong leadership team. So let me start by saying that I have a very strong leadership team at Camden Elementary School, and we all work very well together, and really work this summer kind of talking about things that we're going to be able to do. Of course, when our district came back to school, we decided to offer 3 learning options. So we have been face-to-face since September. We started out with about 50% of our students coming back to school face-to-face, and then we also offer synchronous instruction and asynchronous instruction. So when we came back to school, met with leadership, and really we're trying to figure out some ways that we can really be consistent school-wide, because half of our kids were back in school face-to-face 5 days a week, half were at home doing virtual learning with our virtual teachers at our school. And with that little caveat being said, every 4.5 weeks, students could change their learning option. They can only change their learning option one time, but they could decide if the virtual option was not working for them, they could decide to come back face-to-face. So now, currently, present day, we have about 82% of our students who are back in school face-to-face. So we only have a small number that's still learning virtually. And last year we started something, Eddie and John Robert and I go back. We brought Edmentum products to our district. I was actually kind of a part of that team. So before moving from Jackson to Camden Elementary School, I'd been one of the pilot schools for Edmentum, and Exact Path was just a program that I just really liked. I've really learned a lot more over the last couple of years doing it. But when we first started, I think it was definitely my favorite. So when I came here to Camden Elementary School, Valerie, who you can't see, and we really worked on doing and coming up with a challenge, something small, because we hadn't done Exact Path a whole lot. They were just kind of getting their feet wet. So we just kind of said, let's do a trophy challenge. Let's see what happens. I really believe in visuals in the school, and I have a few pictures that I'll show you. So we really just started with a simple Exact Path trophy challenge, and I think we said everybody would earn 2 trophies, and we just started tracking them. And this was last school year, and of course, we went out with the big pandemic. But the kids, this year, we really wanted to personalize learning a lot more. And we, when when you're doing something small, you have ups and downs. And we noticed, a student on their MAP assessment, if we had a 5th grader who scored maybe a 2nd grade level read on their MAP assessment, they might earn 8 trophies. But then you might have a 5th grader who's on a 7th grade level in math, and they might only be able to earn 1 trophy in the same amount of time that struggling student earned more trophies. So this year we really personalized those learning goals, those Exact Path trophy goals. And we have a display in the cafeteria. And I think when I was talking to John Robert, we just, it was kind of like, I had some 5th graders in my office, and they were excited. Like one class was beating the next class with the trophy challenge. It's a big display. All classes are up in the cafeteria. Our teachers track the personalized learning goals in the classrooms. And we really, we use that MAP data to, this year, I know in that bio, it said we had an action research. It really kind of morphed into action research. I will be honest, we did not start off and say we're getting ready to do this action research project. But when we saw and I pulled up our MAP growth totals, when, we were looking at our school growth totals from fall to winter, 88% of our students grew in reading and 83% grew in math. And then what was really, I guess, eye-opening for me, we only had half of our students back in school. And then when you talk about MAP, when you meet your growth projection, we had 56% of our students who met their growth projection in math in our whole school, and 54% in reading. And we were like, okay, let's look and see what is this correlated to. We knew our teachers were teaching hard, and when we came back to school, I was like, everybody, we have to teach. But then Valerie, our data coach, she did some of her own kind of digging, and really, so she really had to look at each individual student and look and see, how many students were really consistently using Exact Path. And her exact number, out of the 307 students using the program consistently, we only had 2 students who did not grow in math and 8 students who did not grow in MAP reading. So we felt like those numbers, was definitely something to celebrate, and to celebrate our teachers on their hard work. And then it was also eye-opening for those teachers who might not have been using Exact Path as much at the beginning of the school year to say, oh, wait a minute, these students are really growing in teacher A's class, and maybe I need to start it. And it was really kind of fun to watch that, like teachers that I'd never shouted out on the leaderboard, all of a sudden I was saying some different names. And so we were really excited to see what's going to happen on our spring assessment data. And pretty much our teachers, let's see, can I share? I'm not a Zoomer. I usually do a lot with Google, but I wanted to show you our pictures. I have my
we want you to share it. Yeah, I was sitting there typing in the chat. I want to see.
Oh, you want to see? Okay. All right. So let me see. Share my screen. Okay, Valerie, I think we got it right here. All right, I can hit share right now. All right, does everybody see what I'm sharing? Y'all see? Okay, so this is our Exact Path Trophy Challenge in the cafeteria. And you can see kindergarten is in pink and all the way up to 5th grade in purple. And we put it up in the cafeteria, and students, they can, they come in the cafeteria and they can see. And our virtual teachers, usually that smaller line, this has been difficult to keep our virtual you have to really work hard to keep the virtual students engaged. And our virtual numbers have dropped. I think in 4th grade, I only have 6 virtual students left in my virtual teachers class right now. Those teachers have a hybrid model. So that's where you see the smaller lines, but the children, they come in the cafeteria, and I mean, you can see the 5th grade classes right there. And I think is that Mr. J's class in the top. Mr. J's class is in the top. So they've been having like a big little competition. And then we have, so reading is the top, and then math is the bottom. And then we also, on our announcements, we shout out our math and reading leaderboards. So on our announcements in the morning and the afternoon, we'll say, like today, I'll say Mr. J and Ms. Gant's class, they're in the top, they're tied with 50 math trophies in the class. And then we'll keep doing that. And that's also on our TV screen that's posted in the cafeteria. And we'll put those numbers on our Facebook page so parents can see and join in on the competition. And then in the classrooms, we have several teachers who have started where they track the trophies. And I mean, it's just a simple little card, but once a student, and you can see on this, like it says, my math goal is 2 trophies and my reading goal is 1 trophy. And then when I get my trophy, I circle it in, I color in that trophy. And this is from a 4th grade class. And so, a lot of times our older students, we wonder, do they still get excited about, just looking at coloring a picture? But they really do, because I've worked with some 4th and 5th graders this year. And usually if they get sent out of class for something, I say, okay, let's work on Exact Path, because everybody has a Chromebook, so you can always work on that. And then this one teacher who's had really good growth this year, and I think we've shouted her out a good little bit. She made her class goal, so she's every personalized goal, and then you see, like, for reading, her goal back in the month of, September, the goal was 48, and the math, the goal was 48, and then each time a student helps the class, and you see it's all marked on her goal setting sheet. So these are just some small visuals of how it's kind of morphed, and we've started rocking and rolling with that this year in our school with our Exact Path trophy challenges, and really watching that growth. And then another thing I wanted to just make sure, we also, to let everyone know, we have an enrichment block of time during the day. And during that enrichment block, that's when we ask teachers to make sure we devote that time using Exact Path. This Wednesday, when we have our morning PD, we are going to go back and look at their learning path reports and come up with like a spring break challenge. We're doing that with our Dibble scores. So we're going to do like a spring break challenge, like somebody who's maybe not close to meeting their trophy goal. Let's challenge how many of our students can, get their goal for the month before we get out for spring break. And also another feature that I think has been fairly new, maybe, but it's that grouping feature. And as we get it ready for testing, reminding teachers of how they can take what their students are already doing. And I think we were just talking about, what did you say, like find at least common multiple, and put that up, and then go and looking and seeing which students are struggling, so I can work on making my groups with those students. Which students, can they go ahead and move on and work on the next thing, and which students are right here in the middle, and being able to make that enrichment time even more productive than what it is now, especially as we ramp up for spring testing. And before that, that time before spring break, and when we come back from spring break, we'll be getting ready for our spring math testing. So just some ways to just kind of keep it going and really be intentional with it. And one thing that we've just learned through this whole process is just making sure we stay intentional, keeping the conversation on the data. That's definitely one. And I really try to learn as much as I can with the reports, so I can have those conversations with teachers, along with Valerie. She's really my teacher leader, making sure she's always the ones in those PLC meetings. But as a principal, building level principal, I know sometimes our time we get, we just get scattered. So it's just really trying to keep it all intentional and having those conversations and using that language as much as we possibly can.
Matia, thank you very much. I just want a clarifying point for some of our folks on the call that may not be as familiar with Exact Path. You talk about NWA there and growth scores and looking at the growth. Now, Can you talk about, within the Exact Path program that you're mentioning here, NWA, they don't have to take another assessment. We are able to take those scores and put them into the program. So
Right.
that's going to be a little different model than what they hear about from math. So I want to make sure that can you talk about that a little bit, like how they take that math assessment, and then we're able to use that data in Exact Path.
So when our students took their fall MAP scores, then they are assigned a learning path in Exact Path, and their reading scores and their math scores. And then the Exact Path automatically targets those skill gaps that students already have from their MAP scores. And if we have a score that's not valid, because we've had that a couple of times too, we are able to go in, and usually we have to contact the person at the district office, but we can also adjust the path, because we've had that happen a few times when a student just rushed through the MAP assignment or the MAP test and didn't do, it wasn't that caliber work, and they had to, easy paths to do. But yes, it meshes all very well together. And then the same thing happens when they take their winter MAP test. And we just were on a call with our testing coordinator yesterday, because we're adjusting how we're doing our spring MAP testing, because we really want to make sure our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, that we have their data in early enough before we start our end of the year state assessment testing. So that way, if there are any gaps left to fill, we have time to do that with Exact Path.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. And did I hear right? I just want to make sure I heard this right, that of the 300 and I think you said 7 students that were consistent using the program, 305 met their scores on math. Is that right? On
math, 305 met their growth scores on math.
Okay.
And then 299 met their growth scores, met their scores in reading.
I thought that's what you said. Okay, very good.
Now,
that is fantastic.
Students using it consistently, like making sure they're doing it during their enrichment time. Mostly our face-to-face students, and probably our virtual ones that we were able to connect with. But since then, what we've done too is, like, our students, if anybody still has virtual students out there and you're using the program, really started reaching back out to those students and paying attention to what they're doing on their reports, and reminding them, you're still a part of the trophy challenge too, because that's been a difficult piece for us, is just making sure we keep that engagement with face-to-face and virtual.
Sure. Good.
Hey, JR.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to mention something.
Yep.
I wanted to mention something. You talk about those students that were staying so engaged. I just want to just give you some accolades. I mean, it's evident to me why that's the case. You put mechanisms everywhere to give those kids affirmation and to celebrate success, man. That's really good stuff.
Very good. Well,
thank you.
Matia, if you can hang around, there may be some questions in the chat, or we'll have some time at the end where we can open this up, hopefully for some time where folks can come off mute and ask questions, or if you have questions, find that chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and start chatting those in. And Matia, if you can hang around and maybe answer some of those if they have questions
Sure.
from what you just shared. And then Jamie, I think we're going to throw it to Matt. So if you can introduce Matt, we'll get going.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Hey, everybody. Jamie again. Matt's coming in, Harriger from Rowan Salisbury. He's a secondary MTSS director, and we've worked with Matt a lot. As a matter of fact, I think originally our relationship just got started. Matt was one of the first people in Rowan Salisbury. But I think what he's going to share with you today is a little bit on their journey through MTSS. And as a former educator, I think I'm intimately familiar with the challenges of building a successful framework. But I think that Matt can kind of go through and show kind of a little bit of the history and where they are now. And I think it's a pretty interesting story. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone to Matt. How about it, Matt?
All right. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everybody. So like Jamie said, I am the secondary MTSS coordinator in Rowan Salisbury Schools. And Rowan Salisbury is in the central part of North Carolina, just north of Charlotte. We have just a little bit over 18,000 students in 35 schools. I think about 16 of those are secondary schools. We, like a lot of places, opened a virtual school that's K-8 at the beginning of this year. And right now they have about 2,500 of our 18,000 students are still in that K-8 virtual school. Not to mention, I don't even know how many high school students that are virtually learning as well. So when I started in this position, I've been with Rowan Salisbury for a few years. I was an assistant principal at one of our elementary schools. And then last January, I started in this role about 2.5 months before everybody went home. And and so, yeah, Jamie was one of the first people that I met in this role, because at that time we had already had Edmentum for the courseware for secondary schools, but the plan was that we were going to be rolling out ExactPath for this year. Our district was one where, in terms of MTSS, one of the first things on the steps of like how to create a multi-tier system of support, one of the first things is have a universal screener and assessment system, and we didn't have that. So step one was, we didn't have that. So especially in our secondary schools, in elementary, we had our K-3 screeners that the state provided for reading and that type of thing. But so this year, within a pandemic, we rolled out a lot of new things. We rolled out other products for K-5, but then we also rolled out ExactPath for our 6th through 12th grade students, as well as one elementary school that chose to do that chooses to use ExactPath as well. So when I met with schools at the beginning of last year, whenever I was going around and meeting people, starting my position, they were over the moon excited with the opportunity that we were going to have diagnostic data for our secondary, for especially our middle school students. Our high school teachers were a little bit more skeptical, but our middle schools were very, very excited to have that diagnostic data, because we use the ExactPath diagnostic assessments. And so and that's what's really driven a lot of our work in MTSS this year. Is at the beginning of the school year, what we decided to do was to require all of our 6th through 9th graders to use the ExactPath reading and math diagnostics. And we only did 9th grade because typically within an MTSS as a high school, you're using a lot more historical data. So, since we didn't have 8th grade EOGs last year, we felt like our 9th grade teachers needed to have some way of knowing, where are these kids coming to me from middle school? What kind of level are they at? So we stuck with just requiring it for 9th graders. And then since our middle schools were overly excited about it anyway, it was not a problem at all to get middle schools to do the ExactPath diagnostics. They don't take a very long time. They give you a really good picture of where students are, and then they create that learning path within the system. And so we've had a good bit of success with using the learning paths. Our district, I should have mentioned too, is in North Carolina. We are the only school district that's what's considered a renewal district, which is a special legislation that happened a couple of years ago that gives our district what they refer to as charter-like flexibility. So we have some of the flexibilities with personnel, calendars, budget, things like that, that other public schools don't have, but that charter schools do. And so we have 35 different schools, and sometimes we have 37 or 38 different ways of doing things. And so we are very, very site-based. There's not a lot that comes from the district level and says, you have to do it this way, because we're very site-based. So so to have something like this where we were all, that all of our secondary schools were going to use was important, and we wanted to make sure that it was done consistently as well. So in the fall, we had, like I said before, all of our 6th through 9th graders, or a very high majority of our 6th through 9th graders. With virtual students, it was a challenge to get, as I'm sure you all know, getting our virtual students to participate and do some of the things that we're asking them to do has been a challenge. So getting them to do some online assessments was difficult, but we have been, since the beginning of the year, also in Plan B. So our students that were coming to the building came 2 days a week and worked remotely from home 3 days a week. they were given remote, or they're given remote assignments. They don't zoom into the classroom or anything like that. So so really schools, kind of because they're site-based, we've had a lot of success. We have some schools that are still buying in a little bit. We have schools that do things, even middle schools. There's 7 different middle schools and 7 different ways of doing things. We have schools that have an enrichment or a block for intervention time. We have schools that try to use it on Wednesdays whenever everyone's remote. We have schools that try to do it at the end of class periods. I liked what Ms. Goodwin shared before about the rewards and the trophies and things. We have one middle school that has done a lot of work with trying to use some of the trophy features within the system to reward kids for making progress and doing that. So we have really been able to use it to get a 3-tiered intervention model started. Like I said, especially within our middle schools, but then we do also have some high schools that have really jumped on to using it as well in the times that they have. So a lot of places are our MTSS leads, as we call them, at each school will look at the data that they get from ExactPath, and they'll use it to help them tier their students. They'll look at, we use the percentiles a lot to determine if in our school, looking at the percentiles, if they're less than the 20th percentile, then we're gonna look and see if that means that they need to possibly receive some intervention, for whether it's for reading or for math. And then we can use the learning path feature of it for the actual intervention. So in a lot of places, they are, during that intervention time in the day, they're grouping kids into small groups, and then that teacher is working with kids as they progress through their learning path, because it gives them specific skills to work on. I see in the chat a couple of questions about how often they're administered. The ExactPath diagnostics we do 3 times a year. So we did one at the beginning of the year in September. We did one in the middle of the year. What I found at the beginning of the year, because I don't have a real background in teaching high school, was that a lot of the concern was, you're telling me I have to give these assessments to kids for reading and math, but some kids don't have reading right now in this semester. So what we did in the middle of the year diagnostic was, in December, all of the middle schools did both of their assessments, and the high schools could give the assessments in December if they chose to, but then their window also extended into January, so that way it crossed over both the fall semester and the spring semester, so that if a kid was in reading class in the fall but not going to be in an English class in the spring, they could take that assessment in December and not have to worry about it in January after that English class was already done. So we kind of learned a little bit from the fall to try to make that happen, and then we'll take it again in April at the end of the year, so that we get a picture of how far they've grown. There's some great research in Edmentum that you can pull up. That's their growth guidance that talks about how many points and how much a student should grow from one assessment to the next. And we've used that as a little bit of a guide. Obviously, we know too that that's based on kids being in school 5 days a week, and so we've used it as kind of a starting point, and then kind of looked at how much we're able to get. And at some schools, they have all their kids working in their learning paths, and then they really, really work more intensively with their kids that need more help. And then in other schools, they just have their kids that need that more supplemental support or intensive support for intervention working in their learning path, and then they're able to work with everybody else and with other core supports. So I think that's, I don't know if there's anything else that I forgot. That's pretty much a lot of how we've used ExactPath this year, and we've seen a lot of success with it. And hopefully I know we're going to continue them next year. And I think we're looking forward to how this can translate to when kids get back to school 5 days a week, and what that's going to look like, and how we can use them more frequently, or use the learning paths more frequently when we have our kids in school more often.
So that's some interesting stuff, but just wanted to point this out that, and may have been pretty clear as Matt was talking, is that Matt uses the exact path diagnostic, correct, Matt? That you use the one that's inside the program, right?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
But we also have a lot of partners across the Carolinas that use NWEA map testing, and also REN Star, and we integrate with both of those, and so we can build a learning path from that data from that particular program. So it's a pretty slick and nimble program. Matt, do you guys do the same kind of stuff as far as chasing that competition and that affirmation? Is that some things that you guys are doing to get students engaged?
Yeah, I know definitely there's one middle school in particular that they don't have an intervention block of time in their schedule. So they're trying to incorporate the learning paths a little bit differently. So they're definitely working on trying to get kids engaged and you do some of those rewards. In fact, I talked to the MTSS lead there yesterday, and she was getting ready to go do some kind of a reward party or something like that for the kids that they mix it up each time so that they don't know what the incentive is going to be, so that they get their learning path. And I don't know necessarily the specifics of what they require their kids to, what their goal is, but I know that they've been working on. That's one of the things that they've been problem solving through the year, is trying to get incentivize how they can get kids to be on it more often. And they're getting pretty good results. So it seems like they've come up with something.
As I'm looking at, not even just specifically the program that we're talking about, that's the common denominator I'm really seeing, almost that we're really having to get the level of engagement that we need. We're having to figure out some ways to get those kids to, be more interactive with content. And that's a great way to, competition. We did a lot in Halifax with that. I remember at Enfield in particular, we were doing all kind of incentive parties and stuff. It's a great way to get them going.
Well, and I think too that one thing I probably already knew, but I've learned also, is that from the district perspective, obviously the leadership at each school matters. Like Miss Goodwin talked about how she's learned about all the reports and things like that. When we have schools, I have some high schools where we didn't really get as good of a participation in the middle of the year diagnostic as we would have liked with our ninth graders. But then in some cases, that's because it wasn't really pushed from within the school as much as it needed to be. And sometimes it's because we find out that nobody's really shown the teachers how to go in and look at the data. And we've done PD, and we've offered PD from Edmentum, and I've done PD for schools, but until you really get people to go in there and see the data and see it's telling me that this kid is doing algebra on a third grade, or numbers and operations on a third grade level. Wow, I'm trying to teach them algebra too. You really, that's what's really eye-opening whenever teachers get in there and see the data that they get from it as well. Somebody asked in the chat about if the assessments can be incorporated into a data dashboard. And we also this year started using Panorama Student Success, which is a data dashboard as an MTSS platform. And the data from the exact path diagnostics gets pulled into Panorama so that teachers can see all that side by side with their attendance and behavior and those types of things too. So for MTSS, for problem solving, we use that, and then we dive into exact path for some of the more specifics.
Great. It's very interesting. Yeah, I saw at the, I think it was NCASA or NCAS CD or whichever one you did the presentation, and showed how you utilize and leverage that connection between those two. It's really cool. And yes, Sheila, I saw you coming in from Halifax. Hey, let me ask you guys a question. So, and both of you guys weigh in since we got a couple more minutes. So one thing that I think I always ran into in my prior life was when I would bring something like this in, how did you build capacity and get your team excited to where, the truth is, it doesn't matter what we tell good teachers, man, once they close the door, it's their world, right? So what did you guys do? You sound like you figured out ways to engage not only students, but how did you engage your staff?
Well, for us, Matt, you want me to go first? I was waiting to see.
You go first.
It's all
For
right.
us over here at Camden Elementary School, I mean, it's really been about, we have what we call MTSS meetings twice a month, when we have our teachers working in like a data team session. And for us, that's really how we've kind of been really engaging, I would say, for the teachers, because the more, again, bringing it up with the teachers then and showing them the data, showing them the growth and tying it into what we're doing with MAP and making sure that they have the PD there. So if, you know, we have a new teacher coming in, Valerie will go push into the classroom. We, for example, 4K just got new Chromebooks. She's going to go in there and put them on reading eggs, or she did that today already. They went in and did a practice with reading eggs. So a new teacher comes in, exact path, you know, she'll go in and set it up and show them how to use it. And that, I think, keeps it. Or if teachers, you know, are just like, hey, I don't know how to read this report, then they can let her know, and then she'll come in and work with them. So that piece is very important.
That's critical.
Yes, and I totally
Matt, you want to
agree.
add in? Oh,
I'm sorry.
hey, Sheila.
Hey, how's
Go.
everybody?
How you doing?
Hi, I'm
Great to see you.
sorry. I didn't want to hop in here as well and say in Halifax, we've been quite fortunate because we had one person who was not only assigned to be the MTSS coordinator, but there were two. And then we have our Director of Student Information Systems, and also she's our testing coordinator for the district. She provides the support on the Edmentum side. So we've had several different people who provide that service, and we have those teachers who have used it in the past and they glorify it. So they act as in-house supports to not only assist new teachers, but teachers who are a little reluctant to use those things. They provide the professional development in PLCs right at the school. So that's been the win-win for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're doing some cool stuff there in Halifax. We're working with Levon on all that mini credentialing and all that stuff. That's just great. That's great stuff. Matt, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say, in our district, because we've been in Plan B and Wednesdays, everyone is remote. Of course, like I said, this year we've rolled out Exact Path for 6 through 12. We started using Panorama Student Success, which we had already used Panorama for their surveys, but now we use them for their MTSS platform as well. Plus, we rolled out screeners, other screeners in K5. We started using Mastery. We rolled out like everything new this year. But one of the somewhat, I think, blessings in disguise of this year was that because we were in Plan B and everyone worked remotely on Wednesdays, our district set up professional development times from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock every Wednesday morning. So we were able to sign up for times where we could get some of the trainers from Edmentum or trainers from all those other different companies to set up times where we could offer PD, where in the past we would have brought in our MTSS leads out of the school building and in person to a meeting to do PD. This at least offered a time where they weren't missing instruction. They weren't being pulled out of the building. It was a protected time to offer that professional development. So it kind of turned out to be somewhat of a blessing to have that opportunity because I think rolling out all of the programs this year with in a normal school year would have been even more of a challenge to get all those people into those seats to hear that information. So we've also done some, like I said before, we've done some training here and there. Some schools have set up sessions with trainers from Edmentum to get more specifics, or we've set up some other times for people to get some of that PD on Wednesdays as well.
Great. Okay. Anybody else got any more questions? Have we managed the chat window pretty good, John Robert and Nicole and Eddie?
Yeah, we're good in the chat from what I can tell here, Jamie. If anybody else has any questions or anything you want to throw in, now's the time. Pop off mute. We got about 5 minutes as we bring this plane home. So we'd love to hear from you if you have anything else that you'd like to throw in there.
JR, I would, if Matia or Valerie could speak just briefly. I love the fact that you guys, you mentioned the piece with parent involvement. and posting to social media. What has the response been? And I'm following you guys on social media, so I know that it's been, for what I've seen, positive. But if you could speak into that a little bit for the greater community here, that'd be awesome.
So the nice thing is the parents, our students, again, the Chromebooks go home every day. So even if if a student doesn't have anything to do on the weekend, or when we've had students who've been quarantined, we've reminded them to, during your quarantine, remember you can do your Exact Path Trophy Challenge. So that's been good. We also shared this when we shared our MAP data at our School Improvement Council meeting. We shared that with our parents and really, talked about the growth there. So I think the more we've been able to share that data, then that way the parents are able to say, hey, you know what, you've got an extra 15 minutes, let's go ahead and work on your Exact Path Trophy Challenge while we're here at home. And the more the parents know, the more they know about the program. I think that piece is just real essential. It's just good for them to have that knowledge, and for them to see, they're not just playing on the computer. Like,
that's right.
Just I
just applaud you guys for being so creative in harnessing social media in a positive way. I just think that's super cool. You guys are really
that's
doing
definitely
some awesome things.
All Valerie with social media now. She's the social media queen. So she's
cool.
already done our Twitter shout out to y'all. So
oh, very cool. Thank you.